बांधरला फोन कर, आवाज येत नाही मला. फोन कर त्यांना, अजय देशमुख. फोन कर त्यांना. फोन आवाज येत नाही मला. They are not audible. सांग. काय झालं? हॅलो बांदल सर.
हा, गुड मॉर्निंग.
No, you are not audible.
Good morning, madam.
Good morning, good morning.
Shall I start, madam?
Yes, yes, of course.
Good morning, one and all. I would like to welcome our dynamic principal, Professor Dr. C.S. Patil, ma'am. Also, I would like to welcome our resource person, Dr. Mustajib Khan, Professor and Head, Department of English, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, Marathwada University, Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar. I also welcome the another resource person, Dr. Professor Dr. Prantik Banerjee, Hislop College, Nagpur, and all the participants as well as my colleagues, delegates in this national workshop on research methodology. First of all, I welcome all the delegates and I request our principal, Professor Dr. C.S. Patil ma'am, to give introductory note on this research methodology. Principal Dr. C.S. Patil ma'am, hand over to Principal ma'am.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Are you audible? Am I audible to you all?
Yes, you are
Yes,
audible.
madam. Yes, madam.
So, good morning to one and all joined, and I pass on my virtual welcome to the today's resource person. First of all, the English department of Shri Muktanand College, Gangapur. The staff members, namely Dr. Vijay Kumar Bandal, the head of the department and a very senior most person of this department, Dr. Dada Saheb Salunke and Dr. Ajay Deshmukh and all their colleagues. They have organized this particular one-day national workshop on research methodology. It is a generalized word used by all the academicians nowadays. So many webinars, conferences, seminars, workshops are going to be arranged. They are arranging the technical sessions on this particular topic. So I congratulate the English department first, and I pass on my virtual welcome to the today's resource persons, namely Dr. Prantik Banerjee, professor and head of the Department of English from Nagpur, and the name of the institute is Hislop College of Nagpur. The second resource person, our old and very well known colleague of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Department of English, Dr. Mustajib Khan sir. I met him in between periodically number of times whenever I visit to the university. So as a principal of this college, I welcome you all and the resource persons. Just few seconds before, I was touched to my explanation that the research methodology, the subject is concerned, it is a generalized subject and number of academic institute and academicians are now thinking and taking efforts to organize such type of the webinars and such type of the discussions virtually or in person as far as this particular subject is concerned, and that is research methodology. In generalized manner, it is very essential, it is very badly needed as far as to make the students aware about what is research, to make the researchers and to make even the research guides to go into the details of this topic periodically, not only just discussing once and getting stopped. So this topic is not working by discussing one time. This topic should be discussed, and it should be remain continued till our last breath, because as far as the research, the subject is concerned, it is research. That means whatever it is searched, that is to be again researched. Means again and again, the whatever the findings we have got, we have to go into the details of it. Means, for example, the findings of 2020 may not be fruitful, may not be applicable for 2021. So that subject again to be discussed, and the researchers should go front side of that topic to make the research. And therefore, in general, it is called as the systematic observations of new findings, or it is also, we can call it as a journey into unknown or journey into new field. So many of the researchers define this process in their own style. They divide this task in a very degrees, different classes, different divisions. I can put some of them as far as this particular introductory remarks by principal is concerned. There are so many types, there are so many categories. The researchers or so many academicians, they have given in their own style, by their own study, or by their own ideas. So different type of the research or different type of the research methodologies we can consider. As far as to go in a very particular way and in a very authentic way, we can name few of them, like field research, lab research, library research, computerized research, cumulative research, logistic research, explorative research, and go on doing the list. The list will be unending. As far as the nature of the subject is concerned, as far as the topic taken by the students from the research guide is concerned, or as far as the interest and the thirsty areas for the research is concerned, these fields can be changed, or the nature of the work can be changed. Some topics will be of that type. The topic is covered only by doing the comprehensive survey of the literature. We call it as a literature survey. So that comes under the library research. So one can do that. And another subject maybe of this type, the researcher should go to the field and make some survey, collect the data, the details of that particular visit, and discuss with the research guide and discuss with the senior researchers and make the some short listing, and then act upon it accordingly, and then remaining portion of the work can be completed in the laboratory. So as far as this English subject is concerned, in some of the academic institute now English labs are very well equipped with all the necessary instruments like PCs, and therefore nowadays the researchers are also going to that particular English language lab and doing the research on the upcoming applications of this particular subject is concerned. So many types are there. So we can discuss, or we may remain discuss continuously on this topic. Whenever the researchers are approaching towards the research guide, nowadays the students are coming with the blank minds. No topic in their minds. Only they are doing the donkey work and making the literature survey very blindly and just getting past the PET examinations, and they are approaching as per the permission given by the university, and they are rushing towards the guide, and they are only demanding, please sir, give me some subject on which I would like to complete my research work. So in this way, the researchers are approaching towards the research guide. Nothing is there in mind. Therefore, it is the research guide responsibility. It is all academicians' responsibility to make them aware that in what way you should approach to the research guide. At least some topic in your mind. And to do this, that particular researcher, that particular student who is willing to get the registration under the registered guide. So he or she must be with some few topics in their subconscious mind. And to get complete this task, or he or she must visit the library very continuously, daily, do some literature survey, and list up some subjects, and then approach to the research guide, so that they can have the fruitful discussion in between them, and one can do the applied research, or the research which is very much applied for the society point of view. So nowadays it is, I am sorry to say this, but it is happening that the research is going on very theoretically, and no one is bothered about how it is to be applied, whether it is applicable to the society, whether it is applied to the new generation. We are not thinking on this. So as far as the our society responsibility is concerned, because our teachership, our job is a very moral job, and we are the building blocks of the society, and we are making the students very much capable to go into the society as one of the very much civilized person. So that responsibility comes to the academicians. And by taking into consideration all these conceptual views, all these idealities, the one should be very much caring, where one must should be very much pampering, and very much responsible to give the subject to the researchers. So research methodology is a very vague subject, and I am sure that the today's two resource persons may cover this topic by different angles. And also I am very much guarantee that the participants and the researchers who joined for this particular webinar, they may get some ideas, they may get some points, or they may get some vision or directions how to work in our field, how to go with the topics as far as the researchers are concerned. They may cover this topic very promptly and in a very authentic way by giving some particular examples. So even if this topic is generalized, it can be made very much particular and applied to some of the very narrow field of languages are concerned. So because research methodology is the topic not for applied to the social sciences, but this topic is applied to the science stuff, to the social science stuff, to the commerce stuff. So this is a generalized subject. So all the participants should take the benefit of this. So materialized research should not be done onwards. It must be applied, and it must get first into the mind of researchers and research guide. And all the research guides should cover the thirst areas of the societies in a very broader view, or in a very you can say the applied version, so that the society can build up their building blocks in a very stronger way, and the society can becomes or can get upgraded by our contribution. So this topic is very much applied, and the resource persons will give the justice to this subject. So once again, I congratulate the department and also give the welcome, pass on my virtual welcome to the resource person joined, the Khan sir and Banerjee sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was our dear principal, Professor Dr. C.S. Patil, for your brief but very comprehensive introduction to our college, our institution. And she also expressed her views with regard to what real and useful research is, what are the lacunas in the field of research today, and what are the solutions so that we can make research more society oriented, more useful, more fruitful. Thank you, ma'am, once again for your expectation and remarks. Next, I would like to request Dr. V.S. Bandul, Professor and Head, Department of English, Shri Muktanand College, Gangapur, to present his concept note.
Thank you, sir. Friends, research is an integral part of human life. From the Stone Age to the present IT age, human beings have achieved these milestones of development only due to research and development. Therefore, progress of any nation depends on the kind of research and development infrastructure available in that nation. Research has been a part and parcel of the UG and PG curricula across all the Indian universities. However, when we look at the current scenario, we have to work harder on this front. So the real research starts with the problem that we have to write the objectives, review the literature, have some hypothesis, collect data, analyze data, present data, and to come up with solutions or conclusions. Keeping these issues in view, today the Department of English Sri Muktanand College Gangapur is organizing the third national workshop in research methodology. I am sure the deliberation will definitely help all of us. Thank you very much. I hand over to Dr. Madhukar, sir.
Thank you, sir, for your brief concept note. And I take this opportunity to invite Dr. A. Deshmukh, Professor, Department of English, Sri Muktanand College, Gangapur, to introduce the keynote addressee of today's session, none other than Professor Dr. Mustajib Khan, Head, Department of English, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar. Over to you, Dr. Ajay Deshmukh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to have all the eminent scholars and research students to be here on this online podium with us. It's great pleasure to share some information regarding our loving friend, Dr. Mustajib Khan sir, who has devoted his complete life for the upliftment of academics, particularly in the areas of theatre and research methodology also. He has been instrumental in so many developments in the vicinity of university regarding research camps, research workshops, and various departments they are arranging in the jurisdiction of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University. Formally, I would initiate his introduction. So today we have with us Dr. Mustajib Khan sir for the keynote address of this research methodology workshop. He is professor and head of the Department of English, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Aurangabad, previously, and now we call it as a Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar. He has also worked as a director of Students Development Cell and UGC HRDC, as well as Foreign Student Cell in Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar. He has done his MA in English. He has qualified SET and completed his PhD in theatre. His title of PhD thesis was Badal Sirkar, Vijay Tendulkar, and Mahesh Lathani, a theatrical discourse. He has been teaching for last 28 years, and the process is still going on. He has experience of 13 years for UG classes and 15 years for PG classes. His specialization is Indian writings in English, specifically drama, theatre, and film studies. He has also completed a major research project sponsored by University Grants Commission towards political theatre, a thematic study of Utpal Dutt, Safdar Hashmi, and G.P. Deshpande. He has 7 students with PhD who are awarded, and 23 MPhil students are awarded under his able guidance. He has published more than 28 research papers in renowned and reputed national and international journals. 60 research papers he has presented at various national, international seminars and conferences. He has wrote 3 plays and 2 one-act plays in Marathi language. He has translated near about more than 6 to 7 books from English to Marathi. We have one of them is Utpal Dutt's Suyashikar, which is for Marathi is translated. Then Manjula Padmanabhan's Lights Out, Samuel Beckett's Scraps Last Day, Ibsen's A Doll's House, and then Emperor of Mughal in Marathi. He has also translated some Marathi poems of Dasu Vaid into English, and he has also given subtitles to Marathi movie Kalukhacha Parambya. He has received 5 times award for the best light designing by Government of Maharashtra, and he is active in amateur theatre activist. He has so many things to his credits, like he is executive member of Indian Society for Theatre Research, the Association for the Study of Literature and Environment, Delhi. He is also working on gender and human rights for Yashwantrao Chauhan Pratishthan, Mumbai chapter of. He has designed curriculum for film and literature for the Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar Marathwada University. He is also the member of board of editors for various journals. There are so many things that can be shared in his recognition, but for the time being, I would not like to be between you and Mustajid Khan sir. So I would request Khan sir to proceed. Before that, I would like to hand over charge to Dr. Salunke sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for your introduction. And now I request today's keynote addressee, Professor Dr. Mustajid Khan, to enlighten our delegates.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Shanti sir. I'm audible. I'm clear for you. The voice is clear.
Voice is clear, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Principal ma'am of Muktanand College, Gangapur. Head Department of English, Professor Bandal.
Sorry for interruption. Could you please start your video too?
It will hurt if I start my video. The network will get down.
Okay, sir. No issues.
Because it's a bandwidth.
It's up to you, sir. No problem.
In the university, you will not get the internet connection very properly. That's why I
no issues, sir. You can stop your video and proceed with audio alone.
Yes. So, Principal Ma'am, Professor Vijay Kumar Bandal, my friend Ajay Deshmukh, Salunke sir, and the rest of the participants who joined for this national workshop on research methodology virtually. Dear friends, interestingly, in our university, what we see that most of the students, they join research activity not as the passion for doing the research, but as a requirement of their education qualification, they started to deal with their PhD. Hope that rest of the participants are not of that type who are joining research for the sake of completing their educational qualification, because research is not simply a thing to be done on the basis of qualifying something, qualifying some space, or qualifying some position. Research is actually a passion, and for that passion you need to have a kind of understanding, you need to have kind of knowledge of that particular area in which you are interested into moving. What Principal Ma'am in her introduction said very rightly and very aptly, that students are not interested in pursuing research very seriously, as if they are interested in dealing with the research for the sake of their own understanding. They are doing research for the sake of getting something from the Institutes are trying to get the research work done for the sake of doing research, nothing else. Friends, very interestingly, research methodology is a technique. First of all, the student or the researcher who is interested in pursuing research needs to understand the fact that what exactly he or she wants to go with. And here is the main crux of all the work, that most of our research scholars are not familiar with the fact that what kind of research they are interested in. Once they come to the research supervisor with what principal man said, with a blank mind, and asking them to give the topic, from there the question starts. That if you are not familiar with what kind of method you are going to follow in your research, you are asking for a topic which is not known to you. Research work or research topic actually needs to have the students or the researcher's understanding, and he should develop some kind of understanding of his topic so that he can be able to discuss with the supervisor. Very interestingly, we are not at all able to understand what kind of research we are going to deal with, whether it is qualitative research or whether it is quantitative research. Because if you look at the research methodology, it speaks that you should have understanding of what kind of research you are dealing with, whether you are dealing with qualitative research or whether you are dealing with a quantitative research. The two kinds of research are absolutely different types. When you go for a quantitative type of research, you need to have your proper understanding of statistics, you need to have a proper understanding of data analysis, and you need to have a proper understanding of collecting the data. That is called as a quantitative kind of research. And what is qualitative kind of research, where you are going to have some philosophical base for your discussion and you are putting an argument and trying to formulate, trying to discuss, trying to defend the hypothesis that you have initiated with, and then you are trying to put that hypothesis testified with different philosophies and different tools that are available in literature. So first of all, it is most important for all of us to realize, to understand that what exactly is my research, what kind of research I am going to deal with, whether I am dealing with quantitative research or whether I am dealing with quantitative research. If I am dealing with a quantitative research, my method would be different, and if I am dealing with a qualitative research, my method would be different. In literature, you will find out, my friends, rarely students are interested in going with a quantitative kind of research. Most of us are interested in qualitative kind of research, and there we find that we are trying to put certain kind of uh, tools of quantitative to qualitative, and we commit a kind of error in dealing with our own research methodology. And that's why it is most important for us to understand the fact that when we are dealing with our research, what type of research I am doing with. Now let us have step-by-step understanding about the two different types of research, quantitative research and qualitative research. Quantitative research is usually uh, done with a kind of data that you are going to collect from the society. You are collecting some information from the society and trying to find out that what kind of thing that society carried within itself and what kind of recommendation and suggestion your study gives to them that to improve the condition of that particular hypothesis or that particular understanding that you have developed in it. So it is most important for all of us to understand, to recognize, to realize that what type of research I am doing. In quantitative research, the most important thing is that to collect the data. And before collecting the data in quantitative research, we need to understand very important fact that this quantitative research needs
इधर हो
to have
इधर हो गया
someone's,
तो वहाँ पानी का पाइप पर मार देना होगा ये टेबल
please,
कुर्सी
someone's
कौन
mic is
देना कर
on.
टेबल लेवल आप
Yeah,
हो
please ask the mic to stop. Please ask someone to stop the mic.
I would request the participants. Some of you have unmuted your mic. Please mute it.
So you can mute them. An administrator can mute them if it is a
I did it,
yeah.
but still
Please.
somehow.
Yeah.
Dear participants, please mute your mics.
Yeah, let them because most of them will they are simply understood because this is a one kind of a drawback in a virtual kind of online kind of uh, discussion. Let it be. So I'm talking about the quantitative kind of research. So when you are dealing with a quantitative
पवन
type
में
of
चार
research,
बच्चे तो नहीं दिख रहे मेरे को नहीं है।
so if you are dealing with quantitative kind of research, quantitative kind of research is the very, you can say,
बंद कर दे
a
पवन
research, a type of research which is usually done in
पवन बंद कर देना ना
language, not in literature.
नहीं
And
दिख
please understand, when you're dealing with the research methodology in English, you need to specify the thing very carefully that I'm talking about both the types, literature as well as language. Because when you deal with a research in a language, in that case, you need to have a kind of a
तो धूप
data that you
का
need to collect
खराब
and to analyze that data.
अभी नहीं
And the
डाल
analysis of
शाम
data
को डालना
will always made you to give a
शाम को
kind of
पानी डालना
solution or recommendation. That's what I am saying. But if you look at it very carefully, while going with a quantitative kind of method, quantitative kind of research, in that case, what exactly a method to be followed? You need to have, as a very primary thing that I'm talking about in a quantitative kind of research, is that you need to have your hypothesis very systematically developed by understanding the fact that this is what is going on in the society and that is what we want to understand it and how to make or how to rectify or how to correct it or whether it is right or whether it is wrong, what kind of things are going on in the society about certain things. We need to test it. We need to find it out. For testing it, we need to have different parameters to be developed for. Now, in quantitative kind of research, you are not supposed, and in quantitative kind of research, it is very widely expected that this quantitative type of research needs a kind of uh, survey that you need to go out in the society and try to get the survey of certain things. Whether the survey is related with certain texts, certain issues, certain problems, and that problem we need to first of all find it out in our hypothesis, and we are trying to test that hypothesis very seriously. Most of the time what I found that students or researchers, they are not able to understand the exact difference between quantitative and qualitative type of research, and when they are unable to find out the difference between the two things, they apply the methods of quantitative kind of methods to qualitative kind of research and qualitative methods to quantitative, and this kind of vice versa thing always makes a difficult attempt in getting to the conclusion, and rather most of the time it becomes difficult to reach a proper conclusion at the end of the research. Now what exactly we try to dig it in research? Research is nothing but the thing is already existed, but we are trying to get the thing to get more improved, to have that thing to be done very properly, and that's why it is very important for us to understand the fact that research need to understand what exactly are we going to deal with. And accordingly, your methods you have to start. Quantitative kind of method, when you define, when you decide, when you come to a proper kind of hypothesis, and then you are trying to find out or when you're trying to test this hypothesis, at that time you need to get certain information which may be collected from certain kind of surveys. Now, while going with all those things, while going with survey and while going with this kind of method, it is very much important for the researcher to understand the fact that quantitative type of research needs to have a proper kind of collection of data. If a data is not collected properly, you are not going to reach to a particular kind of research conclusion. Now, what I am saying that here we commit a kind of an error by most of the researcher, that when you read certain kind of research proposal given by the research scholar, at that time we come to know that in a standard format, we need to say that we collect the primary data and we need to have the thing to be done, and we analyze the primary data with the help of secondary data, and then we come to a conclusion. Now, what I am saying, in quantitative kind of research, you are dealing with data, but in qualitative kind of research, you are dealing with sources. In qualitative, there is no data, there is source. And if you are able to collect the source, and that's what we make a mistake that we are what we write usually in our research proposals, that we are going to collect the primary data and then we are going to analyze. Data is actually collected for the sake of quantitative type of research. And in this, if you are not able to understand the difference between quantitative kind of method, research method, and qualitative kind of research method, then this type of error always takes place in writing of our dissertation or thesis also. Friends, let us understand why quantitative kind of method is totally dependent upon the survey and why I'm telling it is a data. The reason is that quantitative kind of research is based on a certain hypothesis, and the hypothesis may have various kinds of understanding, and we try to test that hypothesis. Hypothesis is nothing but what you assume, what you think that this is what is happening. I'll give an example. For example, if we are dealing with a kind of hypothesis where we say that learning of English in secondary school or in learning of English in graduate colleges as a compulsory subject, and the issues and problems faced by students of Marathi medium. Now, if this is what you are going to try, and this is what you think that there are certain problems that Marathi students face, Marathi medium students, not Marathi medium students faced while studying English language. And then you start to find out the data, and then you have developed this kind of hypothesis. Now, for this hypothesis, you need to have certain kind of data to be collected. And for that, you need to visit certain colleges, certain places, certain institutes where Marathi medium students are pursuing their education in English and how they are facing the problems. For that, you have to discuss with your research supervisor to have your own kind of questionnaire that need to be prepared in discussion with the research supervisor. Now you are preparing a questionnaire, you are giving a questionnaire to the students, and you are trying to get an answer of that questions on which you are going to analyze the whole data and coming to a conclusion that what you are talking about, what you hypothesize, what is your understanding, what you assume, whether it is correct or is not correct. If it is nullified or if it is accepted, what you exactly did with your kind of collection of data, analysis of the data. While doing all those things, you need to have in this kind of method of quantitative kind of method, you need to understand that you need to have a strong support of literature review. That whether somebody worked on that, and that's what Principal Man then categorically mentioned that students are not very seriously taking about the literature review. And it is one of the methods of research that if you don't have a proper research review, literature review, you are unable to get all those things done in a very proper way. And that's why it is very much important for all of us to understand the fact that the research methodology needs to have a proper understanding of what exactly you are going to do. So a basic thing that we need to understand is the difference between data and source. And that is what you are collecting the data from different colleges. And for that, when you are developing a questionnaire with the teacher, with the help of your supervisor, and you are taking that, and then you are applying various kinds of theories or taxonomies for understanding, for analyzing that data. And for that, it needs to have a proper understanding of statistics. And for that, you need to take support of statistics. And if you are not able to understand the statistics properly, if you're not able to find it out that what kind of ratio that you are talking about and how much students are aware of all those things, how you are going to define all these ratio, quantitative kind of research requires the support of mathematics also, although you are doing research in language. And that's why research methodology for quantitative kind of research is very much close to the research methods that used in social sciences as well as commerce and management. And that's a student of English, if he is pursuing research in a quantitative kind of research, what kind of methods, what kind of things that he should carry forward into his research needs to understand very carefully. Otherwise, what happens usually that major research in English was taking place in qualitative kind of research rather than going with a quantitative kind of research. And when it is going with a qualitative kind of research, it is very much important for all of us to understand, to realize, to find it out that this quantitative kind of research is related, is having a direct kind of social relevance. which is having a direct kind of applicability to the society. Now, usually what happens, people used to have a subject and a qualitative kind of research. The basic crux is you are trying to philosophize, you are trying to add something into the domain of the knowledge system. And with the addition of that particular thing, you are going to make or you are going to add something in the understanding of that particular literature with a kind of philosophical stance that we are going to find it out in qualitative kind of research. But when you are dealing with a quantitative kind of research, quantitative kind of research is directly applicable to the different notions of the society. And that's why quantitative kind of research. Mostly we find that in English we are dealing with a qualitative kind of research, and that's why quantitative, while few of the students who are pursuing their research in quantitative method, at that time the students were unable to make a difference between quantitative and qualitative. And because majority of the students, as you know, that we follow majority as a law, and because as we follow majority as a law, we try to follow the same kind of methods that have been used in qualitative kind of research rather than going with the quantitative kind of research. There are so many theories that have been developed in quantitative kind of research. If you look at a quantitative kind of research, you will find out that quantitative kind of research has most of the time discussed with a kind of theories that are available in English language teaching or in kind of stylistics, in kind of linguistics. And when you find it out, this linguistics and stylistics and English language teaching, these language methods always need us to understand and to find it out that the way we are dealing with and the way we are talking about, that always helps us to get understanding of the research that we are doing. And that's why if you see very carefully, the kind of methods that we have in uh, languages, we have a kind of discourse analysis as a method for quantitative kind of research, I'm telling you very particularly, or conservation analysis, or genre analysis, or ethnography, or text analysis and interpretation. When you are analyzing all those things, linguistically you are dealing with all those things in your research. And when you are dealing with all those things linguistically in the research, you will find out that here you need a concrete support of the different kind of statistics that you are going to have for your analysis by taking support of all these things. Very interestingly, in this quantitative kind of methodology, the common error we used to have that we never use a certain kind of support for a kind of understanding of that particular theory that has been already developed into that particular area. Because what we always think that we have collected a primary data, we have analyzed the primary data. Now, when we have analyzed the primary data, we have used the statistical tool to analyze the primary data. But when you are trying to make an argument, when you are trying to make kind of a statement, please understand in your research, your statement complete is a complete responsibility of the researcher only. No other person can take the responsibility of the statement given by the research scholar. And that's why it is most important for all of us to understand, to realize, to recognize the fact that the research is qualitative or quantitative. And if it is a quantitative, I need to have this analysis based on the statistical tool. But when I am trying to analyze that analysis, which I have made a complete understanding of that issue with a statistical tool, when I'm analyzing that particular issue, at that time I need to have a proper understanding of the different kind of theoretical frameworks that have been developed into my particular subject. And what happens usually that we are not able to reach to those theoretical frameworks that are available into that particular area, and that makes a little bit of question in front of most of the scholars that were going with a quantitative kind of research. Shall I need to put any theory for that? Yes, you need to have a theory which is going to be the base of all your argument, on which basis you have developed this kind of assumption. For example, the example that I have given, that the issues and problems of learning or reading or writing of Marathi medium students in English language, and for that sake, if you are trying to have, you are developing, you are finding certain kind of theories. And the theories, if you are not able to get the theories properly, but you are going with the support of literature review, that what kind of work has been done, and what kind of conclusion that just has. very much difficult for all of us to understand. It's that we are not able to make it very clear with the help of the kind of, you can say, uh, methods that we are applying. Friends, please understand this fact that literature review in quantitative kind of research is the most important part because the kind of conclusions they have reached into that particular area and they have developed certain lacunae into that particular area. For that, we need to have an understanding, proper understanding of getting it done in a very proper way. Uh, Friends, we should understand another fact uh, that this uh, kind of research which I am talking about that needs a proper kind of understanding of the topic with the help of the literature review. And if you are going for that particular understanding of that literature review, that helps you to get the kind of theoretical framework that you need to have for debate, for the kind of discussion, for the kind of understanding uh, of that particular, you can say, uh, issue that you have discussed into your research. That is what you need to have a proper understanding. And a quantitative research can able to reach to a recommendation, can reach to a particular kind of a suggestion, can reach to a particular kind of understanding, and where we can able to talk about, where we can able to tell the things that uh, the hypothesis which you have developed is modified, or the hypothesis which I have developed is correct, and we need to take these measures, and these recommendations and measures can be sent to the planning authorities who are planning something new into that particular area, or the government agencies who are working into that particular area. That's why what ma'am said, it needs to have a reflection of society into research. A quantitative kind of research methodology will help us to reach to that particular place, not qualitative kind of research. Somehow you can say qualitative kind of research may philosophize that particular aspect, may philosophize that particular issue that we are going to talk about. Now, the reasons, the causes, the issue, the problems that why these students face, you can able to discuss all those things with the help of the theories that are available into English language teaching, into linguistics, into stylistics, and there we can able to find it out that how the solution can be procured. That is what we need to understand, that research in English is not only a research in literature, it is a research in language also. And for the sake of language, we need to have, mostly, we have to apply the quantitative kind of method. And as a research, as a student of research methodology, we need to understand what kind of method I am going to apply to my research. This is what quantitative kind of research that we need to understand it very carefully. Very interestingly, most of the time you may have your doubts, you may have your questions in your mind that whether this quantitative kind of research be applied to literature. Yes, you can. That is what I said. That the formulation of your hypothesis may define, may decide, may take you towards the kind of method that you are going to adopt, the kind of method you are going to apply. If you are using a similar kind of a method, which is quite uh, useful for giving certain kind of suggestions, you may, but you have to define at first what kind of method you are going to use, whether it is quantitative or qualitative. Now moving towards qualitative kind of research. Qualitative kind of research is a research where you will find out, you make an hypothesis, you assume certain things, and then you want to build up an argument on that particular kind of method. What on that particular type of hypothesis you have. The qualitative kind of research, as I said, is trying to philosophize that particular question and find it out what kind of argument has been developed, and whether this argument will lead to a proper conclusion, that what you are thinking, what you are talking about, what kind of hypothesis you have developed, whether you are reaching to that particular hypothesis or not in a proper way, you can able to understand it through the qualitative kind of research. Now let me tell you one thing. In qualitative kind of research also the same technique go up to a literature review where you have to find it out that the earlier researcher has also worked on this in this particular area, but this lacuna, this kind of research gap that he had pointed out into his research and that you have searched this research gap into the research. Please remember one thing, in qualitative kind of research methodology, you need to point out your research gaps, that what kind of research gaps that you find it out in the earlier researchers. And based on this research gaps, you are going to develop a new kind of argument. Please understand, you are not developing any argument in quantitative kind of method because you are having a real-time data in your hands, and with that real-time data, you are going to analyze the whole thing. But in a qualitative kind of research, you are taking support of certain kind of understanding and certain kind of philosophies, which did not have any kind of real-time sources available. So what you are going to deal with, you are going to discuss this qualitative kind of research with the help of different theories that you are having at your possession. And that's what you need to understand, that what kind of argument that I am going to build it up. Because what is the another meaning of the word thesis? Thesis is nothing but an argument. And if you are arguing on certain things, your argument needs to be based on certain kind of sources that are available to you. And all those sources are available in the form of texts that are available in your library or in your different kind of sites that are available there. So in qualitative kind of research, you are putting an argument and developing that argument up to such a level that whether that argument that you are developing is in support of your hypothesis or if it is rejecting your hypothesis or whether it is accepting your hypothesis. Based on that, you are using different kinds of tools. And unfortunately, what happens with most of us that when we talk about research methodology, we focused on tools rather than talking about method. It is a method. What exactly method you are going to apply to the correct method for reaching your goal. The kind of tool that helps you to understand that particular available in university. There is a tool in which you can establish experiment analysis. It takes support of all those theories and you have to analyze that particular data. It takes support of all the theories that are available. But in qualitative kind of research, you have to use the tools like the theories that are available in the market. There are so many different critical theories. There are so many inquiry theories that are available. There are dualism to postmodernism. There are a range of theories that are kind of are building up. Very interestingly, what happens most of the time that research scholars find that are not able to analyze that particular research, and when these theories are analyzing that particular research, it makes us these tools are not methods, but these tools are supporting for making the research exactly that we talk about. And very interestingly, if you see very carefully, the tools we are using right from the different kinds of theories from humanism, from humanistic perspective, theories from critical perspective, theories from interdisciplinary perspective, theories from language perspective, theories from different philosophies we are using to test, to make your argument true what you are arguing, and what you are arguing, what you are telling. It needs to tell the kind of understanding that you are taking it. And that's why the most common, you can say, error that most of us commit, that we are not able to understand whether we are following a qualitative kind of research methodology or quantitative kind of research methodology. We are talking, when we talk about research methodology, we always think that I'm talking about certain kind of theory and that theory is my method. No, that theory is not your method. The theory is one of the tools that you are going to use that particular tool to make for you to understand. And this theory is most of the time you to reach argument or the tools are making you to reach to a particular conclusion. And that's the research needs to have. Before going for any research, the most important thing for any research scholar is to locate, is to find out what kind of method that he is going to use in his research, whether his research is a quantitative kind of methodology that he is going to apply for research, or whether he is applying a qualitative kind of research, and in which the different tools that which he is going to use, all those different tools for that. Another very interesting thing in this research methodology is of making of your thesis. Thesis, because thesis is going to be your first uh, impression with the external examiner who is going to read your thesis and may able to understand that what kind of methodology you are adopted. And that's why it is most important for all of us to understand that what kind of methodology I am using and how I am putting my methodology in front of my thesis with the help of the different tools that I am using to it. And that's why it is very much important for all of us to understand, to realize, to recognize that these are the different methods that we are going to follow. And in this qualitative kind of methods, I'm using this tool which ranges from various theories that are available for me, and I'm going to apply that theory so that I can able to put my argument, I can take my argument ahead. And that's why while writing our bibliography for an MLA 9th edition, what we are going to use most of the time is that we used to talk about the work cited in our research work and what the kind of works, what kind of sources we have cited from research. Those sources are talking about, those sources are giving us a clear-cut understanding that what kind of tools we have used in our research. And that is most important for us to understand that what kind of method I am using. I hope that this workshop for the rest of the day will took this deliberation ahead and will have understanding of what exactly the qualitative kind of methods and what different types of tools can use and can be applied in qualitative kind of method, and what kind of tools can be applied for quantitative kind of methods. If that is going to be deliberated in coming sessions, that will help the research scholars to understand what kind of research methodology and how they are going to deal with the research methodology. I'm thankful for the organizers for giving me a chance to speak for uh, this topic, because very rarely we used to speak on these kinds of methodologies that we are going to use in our research. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Mustajid Khan, for enlightening us. Firstly, Professor Dr. Mustajid Khan drew distinction between qualitative and quantitative research, and how the tools vary when it comes to research on language and literature. A researcher has to be very alert while choosing quantitative tools and qualitative tools. He also cautioned us against, uh, kind of intermingling of these two sets of methods in literature research. The lecture was very comprehensive, very useful, very fruitful. So, on behalf of our organization and all the participants, I am thankful to Dr. Mustajib Khan for his comprehensive lecture. Thank you, sir. Uh, Now, I request Professor Dr. Vijay Kumar Bandal to introduce the next resource person, Professor Dr. Prantik Banerjee.
Thank you,
It's
sir.
all to you, sir.
Today's resource person, Dr. Prantik Banerjee, is a professor of English, Hislop College, Nagpur. He tries to make his students romance with language and literature. He encourages young minds to break rules in his classes, for he believes that you cannot be creative unless you are a habitual rule breaker. Sir has written 9 books, 12 book chapters, and 46 research papers in peer-reviewed journals. His recent books are A Handbook of Research in English Studies, Macmillan Education India Private Limited, 2023, Teaching of Culture and Culture of Teaching, 2022, Cultural Studies, Text and Context, uh, 2021, and Theory in Praxis, Discourses in Literature and Culture 2021. Sir has received international award for the Keeper of the Dead. Sir is also a poet, short story writer. Sir has guided many students. Sir is also an IQAC coordinator and expert of internal quality assurance cell. He was invited as an expert of the drafting committee of NCCI's National Higher Education Policy. He edited the Kakodkar Committee's report of National Institutes of Technology. He prepared and presented the technical conference statement of AIC at Christ University, Bangalore. He has served as expert on the selection committees of appointment of lecturers by Stephens College, New Delhi, Xavier's College, Mumbai, and many other colleges. He has certified as HRD trainer for TCS Bangalore, and he has conducted several teacher and corporate training programs. He has given so many keynote addresses in conferences, international and national levels. He is a NACS expert and RUSA trainer and has conducted many training programs for colleges and universities in India. He is an external advisor to IQAC of reputed colleges and universities and impaneled at National Faculty Trainer of AIACHE New Delhi. He is a passionate, his passion is teaching and researching. He also loves to reach creative writing to youngsters and conducts workshops and research writing and methodology. Today, his lecture will be, say, motivative and helpful for the new researchers as well as the research methodology. I request Dr. Prantik Banerjee to deliver his lecture.
Thank you.
Over to Dr. Prantik Banerjee, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Bandhu. Let's do a system check. Am I audible first of all?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I see there are 90 scholars who have joined for this national workshop on research methodology. My first request is, if it is a workshop, then it's not just about talking through the topic. It also has to be a meaningful exercise, a meaningful and productive exercise with several takeaways for research scholars, faculty, and so I was introduced as somebody who loves to break rules. I think let me start by requesting the participants not to request the organizers for a feedback link immediately. Hang on for a minute. This is a workshop that you have joined on your own free will and volition, and I think you have joined as Principal Madam of Muktanand College. I think, she, in her opening remarks, she pointed out quite a few issues related to research writing in general. And I think she already has spotted the elephant in the room. By that I mean that what really is research in English studies in India, especially in some sort of a crisis. And she has very rightfully pointed out some of the challenges or some of the areas, gray areas, shall I say, where our research scholars seem to be more focused on their API scores. My bad for saying so. For their API scores rather than for the pursuit of research in its true sense, as a field of investigation, as a line of inquiry into something that is new, or even making some important contributions to the area of your study. But I do believe in this. I do believe that the way forward really is to take a look at whether English studies, specifically in India, is in some sort of crisis. Yes, there is. The previous speaker also has touched upon it. We talked about that English studies as a discipline is losing out to the market economy. And we, its practitioners, you and I, as teachers of English language and literature, and researchers, we are, I dare say, becoming more and more obsolete. We are becoming more and more irrelevant in this digital age, in this high tech age. Um, the reasons are pretty obvious, I suppose. The precarity of English studies is something, where English departments more and more, despite the proclamations of the National Education Policy, the NEP 2020, English departments are increasingly feeling sidelined. With each passing year, think about English studies, how they're getting shortchanged. I mean, there is less and less funding in the field of research in English, research in humanities in general. There is definitely a resource crunch, and there's a shortage of faculty. Most of the departments are running on part-time and what are called ad hoc teachers who are paid a pittance. And the quality of research generally that is being, I would say, I'm not going to pull any punches, but I'm surely saying that the quality of research is something that is becoming more and more unproductive in terms of, um, the previous speaker was laying a lot of emphasis uh, on quantitative research and made a fundamental, of course, uh, reiterated, highlighted the fundamental difference between quantitative and qualitative research, which of course is important, but then uh, with I would say that with a caveat, with a rider to it. My own teaching experience has been over 2 decades, and I think the minute we think of why we are becoming irrelevant, the elephant in the room is to think of the study of literature having a kind of a losing out on its what you call utilitarian value. And that is precisely the problem that I feel is to look at research from a very, very empirical, from a very, very pragmatic point of view. Yes, research must have a social reference. Yes, it must have an institutional support. Yes, it must open up new areas or new dimensions in the field of in the specific field in the specific field or what we call the knowledge domain. But purely to evaluate and assess the quality of a research or the necessity of research from the point of view of its practical utility seems to be a lopsided idea. Um, uh, Yes, hand wringing and chest beating. Yes, when we think about the precarity of English departments and generally the quality of research in India, um, hand wringing and chest beating is, of course, not going to help us. And I think, therefore, we need to have such kind of deliberations in conferences such as this, or rather, more importantly, in workshops which are focused only on research, where whatever we can, based on our experience, maybe whatever we can give to the research community as maybe senior scholars, we can give to our discipline some lungful of fresh air by opening maybe new vistas to a young researcher or a wannabe researcher in this field. I sincerely feel, and I've said this, in a recent conference um, in Vijayawada, in an international conference last week, and I will repeat what I said there, that we, the practitioners of English and language studies, we need to fashion what I call the new humanities. There is a need for shifting from the way in which we have practiced and uh, 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 the traditional humanities as a field of inquiry, as an epistemological field. We need to now shift from traditional humanities to new humanities, and I will explain in my shortly what I mean by this new humanities. One of the fundamental principles I can tell you at the very outset what I mean by new humanities, or what is the driving force I believe of calling it a new humanities uh, is the breaking of disciplinary boundaries. I have I have argued and held forth our case for the relevance of humanities in general and English studies in India at many a forum, including in engineering and technology colleges as well, or universities as well. And I feel that contradisciplinarity, we need to move. The new humanities is defined by something that I would like to call not just interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary, but what I call contradisciplinary. Like Frost Friends, we need to, we of English studies must say that something there is that doesn't like a wall. And the wall, of course, I'm using the Frostian sense of the wall in terms of the boundaries of disciplines, the boundaries. The idea is no longer to confine knowledge to, silos that are separate and divorced from each other, but to emphasize on the interdependence, in the interdependence of, let us say, the arts and the social sciences with science and technology with with medical science, etc., etc. Fundamentally, this is my position that when I say that I'm here to take a stand for arguing for the development, for the emergence and development of a new kind of humanities, it is to move away from the traditional approaches and the traditional practices that have defined our engagement with literature and language, and to focus more on interdisciplinarity, or what I would like to call a better word, a contra-disciplinarity. With these opening remarks, let me share my screen with you. Can I hope the admin has given me, the host has given me the sharing rights, as they say.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Are you able to share?
Just a minute. Give me a minute.
Are you able to share, sir? Then,
Just
if
one.
not, I will
No, no,
do
no.
some changes.
Just hang on. Just give
Please,
me a
sir.
minute.
Take your own time, please.
No, no, I won't take my time. I'll take only 1 minute. There, can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes, sir. Visible now.
Yeah. So, friends, this is the subject of my, or rather, I've titled it, hopefully, to draw your attention, to make you curious. How many children did Lady Macbeth lose? How many children did Lady Macbeth lose? Research and the newness of old things. Are we all there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Fine. Having made, having perhaps highlighted, pointing out to you the precarity of English studies, let me focus now on the subject of today's workshop. I believe, with my experience in research, I believe that the most important thing in research is to ask questions. The fundamental step, how do you begin your research? The fundamental step to flag off your research, and research is, friends, much like Tennyson's Ulysses, it is to strive, to seek, and to conquer, isn't it? So research is fundamentally the asking of questions, but not any question, the asking of right questions. More often than not, I believe that asking good questions, by the way, it's a skill. Asking good questions is, it leads to great research. It leads to great research, and asking and great research leads to great writing. Yeah, I'll spend some time talking about what really I mean by great writing. I'll come to that in a few minutes. While I was thinking about today's workshop, I actually, I just read a couple of weeks back two very interesting essays, both research based. And by the way, since Professor Khan spoke so much on quantitative research, what I would like to do is to draw your attention to the usefulness, shall I say, or the utility of qualitative research as well. I'll take the middle path rather than arguing one over the other. So, I just read two interesting essays. Both were research based, whose very titles got me. Uh, they were pretty thought provoking. Why? Because they had questions like the question of today's talk. How many children did Lady Macbeth lose? Well, that is the title of one of the research papers that I came across in a good journal. And the second question was, why is the mother absent in King Lear? Or rather, why is Queen Lear missing in Shakespeare's play King Lear? I mean, the first essay, of course, I'm not going to spend much time on it, on what the essay is. Let me not give you a spoiler. You have to do a Google search and you'll find the essay. But the first essay it was interesting on two counts. One, of course, is that it goes back, it gestures, it reminded me, of course, it's a new take on the classic essay written by a very, very renowned, very prominent Shakespearean scholar, L.C. Knight. L.C. Knight way back in 1933 wrote an essay which has become one of the landmark essays in Shakespearean scholarship, at least till the 1950s, 60s, and 80s, was How Many Children Had Lady Macbeth? L.C. Knight wrote that essay, titling it as How Many Children Did Lady Macbeth? Or rather, How Many Children Had Lady Macbeth? Of course, Knight's question was not really related to children, not really what the title said, but into some other issues, as is the case with this new revisionist title of L.C. Knight's classic essay, where the researcher is asking how many children did Lady Macbeth not have, but how many children did Lady Macbeth lose? And the other the research paper, which says why is Mrs. Lear, or why is Queen Lear absent in Shakespeare's King Lear? Notice, for me, what I wanted to draw your attention to is that notice how both titles have questions which become the starting point, which became the starting point of their research analysis of bringing forth new interpretations, the two Shakespearean plays that we have read and studied right from our undergraduate courses to maybe our MA courses, and an entire universe of scholarship and commentary that has already been written on Shakespeare, and his writings. But then, what these two researchers did is to establish, by asking these provoking questions, what they try to do in their respective research papers is to try and establish intricate connections between the characters in the play and the broader issues of patriarchy, femininity, motherhood, reproduction, and family dynamics in the light of Shakespeare's plays. So, my reading of these two new essays from the field of Shakespearean scholarship reveals that, when you think of criticism on Shakespeare or doing research on Shakespeare, you tend to think that, well, nothing any more can be done on Shakespeare's plays. Well, well, there is, and plenty. And every year, if you do a Google search, or if you do even on InflibNet, if you look at the number of theses on Shakespeare, well, there are plenty. Not all of it, of course, is good, but I'm saying Shakespeare still seems to be a minefield of research topics, even for contemporary, 450 years after Shakespeare's time. Also, interestingly, and this is another fundamental principle that I would like to encourage all of you who are researchers today. Your reading has to be an updated reading, friends. There can be no research unless you keep yourself abreast with at least the best books, or the upcoming books, or the newest books in your specific area of research, whether it is literature or whether it is language studies. For me, when I read these two critical essays, what it also led me to do was to read two recent and remarkable novels, because there was a mention of these two novels in these papers, which are, in a sense, 21st century revisions of the plays, of Shakespeare's plays. They are novelistic retelling of Shakespeare's plays. Uh, uh, the first one, okay, just hang, yeah, let me move my slide. Yeah. Can you see my slide, Shakespeare in Fiction?
Yes.
All right. What you have on the slide, friends, are three titles of some very recent novelistic retelling of Shakespeare's plays. So it's interesting. It's a very fascinating thing to look at the way in which Shakespeare's plays, which were primarily meant for the stage, have actually been turned into novels. The first one is the woman that you see on the slide is an Irish writer, Maggie O'Farrell, and she was, I think, shortlisted for also for the Booker Prize, or she may have won the Booker Prize. I'm not sure. I'm not able to recollect at this point in time. But this is a book called Hamnet. This is a novel called Hamnet, which she wrote and published in 2020. It's about how Shakespeare's life spins out of control when he loses. We know the backstory, how that Shakespeare wrote the play Hamlet a couple of months after the tragic loss of his son, Hamnet, and also his father, John. And so we know that when we do biographical research, when a researcher does biographical research or historical research, we know the background, that the context becomes more important, and there has been many good scholarship on the way in which Shakespeare's plays have been interpreted and have been analyzed from its historical context by locating Shakespeare's plays in 16th century Elizabethan age. So anyway, the novel is, however, not so much about Shakespeare, and that is what is interesting. I wanted to tell you about. It is actually about his wife, Anne Hathaway, or the fictional character who represents Anne Hathaway, his Shakespeare's wife. So by focusing on Anne, and the other, of course, is on the other novel that has Lear Wife. It's called Lear Wife it's a debut novel by another writer named J.R. Thorpe. And both these novels, they're kind of interestingly, they focus on women in Shakespeare's writings, women who have been written out of history, and women who are probably play no or minor roles in their own narratives. So Thorpe's debut novel, Lear Life, is something that fictionally tries to answer the question that many literature students ask us while reading King Lear in the class. What happened to King Lear's wife? Why is the mother figure absent in Shakespeare's Lear? So both Lear Wife as well as Hamnet, uh, both kind of resurrect the feminine figures, the female figures who are often marginalized, both in the narrative itself as well as in critical commentaries, and 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 um, and to suggest that that there are interesting nuances, there are interesting layers that we can still discover in Shakespearean plays. Uh, it reminds me again of what Principal Madam said in her opening remarks when she sort of she emphasized that word, that research is research. It is to continuously discover and rediscover. It is to continuously go back to our engagement with maybe even classical literature or even canonical literature, and then to find that there are some still undetected questions that can be answered despite the scholarship, for example, on Shakespeare, which has such a long tradition. So, friends, between Shakespearean scholarship, let us say, from the 19th century, remember Coleridge. You think of Coleridge, well, Coleridge was also a Shakespearean critic and a Shakespearean scholar. So, from Coleridge of 19th century, when we move fast forward to 21st century, we're looking therefore in the field of literary studies, which has evolved with newer methods of analysis, with newer approaches of criticism, the so-called isms, the many isms that have come from the mid 20th century, structuralism, post-structuralism, feminism, post-feminism, post-colonialism, eco-criticism, and all these approaches that approaches even like in the field what we call how literary studies are more and more progressively migrating towards culture studies, or take for example the niche domain of queer studies. So, my argument really is that when we think about research, even in literature, well, uh, there is a newness that one can find in old things. And I don't mean, finding old, putting old wine in new bottles. No, no, not at all. But let me assure you, you still doing research in qualitative research, doing qualitative research, you can still find more texture and properties as the old wine matures. Are you with me? Friends, are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I, you know,
Yes,
I,
sir.
I would like to
Yes, sir.
believe, thank you. I would like to believe that we, although we are on a virtual platform, but the interactions must go. And your yes sirs and right sirs are a reassurance to me that I'm talking to an audience. Well, um, a research paper, Kenneth Burke, the literary scholar and philosopher, he's the one who gives a very simple definition of what a research paper is. That, a research paper is simply a piece of textual analysis that adds your critical voice to an ongoing conversation. I love this definition. Why? Because it points out two important things to me, to my understanding of what research is. One, that when you're doing research, you are not doing for not just to get your API scores or to get your doctorate and your API scores. You're not doing research only to for your paper or your thesis to be read by the three examiners and five people in your or in your viva. Um, to do research is to enter into an ongoing conversation. I like that word, conversation. All right. It is to have a dialogue, and sometimes dialogue with whom? With previous researchers who may go far back in time. I was talking about Elsie Knight. We're talking about, if you want to add something, if you want to take up Shakespeare even today as a researcher, well, you are entering into a conversation also. Inadvertently, you are entering into a conversation with the likes of Elsie Knight, with the likes of A.C. Bradley, with the likes of Arthur Quiller Cowd, all of these Shakespearean scholars, and such a fine and rich tradition. And that sort of becomes an inspiration for you to do some very quality research work, an excellent research work, one that involves the rigorousness of methods as well as some substantiative, findings. Research is not shooting the breeze, friends. Research is not a walk in the park. um, there is a rigorness. So you need to prepare yourself for giving blood, sweat, and tears. Well, if not blood, certainly a lot of sweat, and occasionally when you have emotional meltdowns, as I've seen many of my research scholars, when the pressure gets to them, well, some tears as well. But no harm about that. But you have to understand that when you're doing research, this is serious work. The second thing about the definition that I like is that it's an ongoing conversation, which means there are no full stops to research. Research is not a lonely, isolated individual activity. And second, there are no closures to research, because by entering into a select field of yours, you are entering into a conversation where many research scholars have written in the same field of inquiry before in the past. There are other research scholars that are doing research in your area even today, and there will be researchers in the future who will be engaging with the same field as yours. What I wish, therefore, to point out to you that research is a collaborative community effort. That when you're writing the next paper, or when you are writing your thesis, you are entering into a community. You become a member of a research community, and therefore it is extremely important to look at it as not just as a purely academic exercise, but everything that you write and say and claim or disclaim is something that has to have an impact in the research community. All right. Can research be original? Often when young research scholars come to me, they say, we like to do something original. Sir, is there any topic that you can suggest which is absolutely new, which is absolutely original? I'm afraid that the word original is mythified a lot. It's very difficult, uh, you may argue that it's not possible to write anything original anymore on Shakespeare or, let's say, James Joyce or on T.S. Eliot. I mean, hundreds of theses, hundreds and thousands of monographs, books, and articles have already been written on them, isn't it? But then, my claim, my advice, my suggestion to you would be that yes, one can continue to go back to them, and people are still doing it. One can continue to go back to them and several other canonical writers, with this difference that you bring out some new dimensions by approaching their writings, and now I bring in the dreadful word, by bringing in new theoretical, or bringing in new theory, or bringing new theoretical perspectives. I recently was giving a talk in the National Law University, the Maharashtra National Law University, to a bunch of legal researchers in the field of legal studies. And guess what? I asked them if they thought that it was a waste of time for them to be, to be listening to somebody who belongs to the field of literature. So I argued my case. I argued my case, much like Portia does in for Antonio and Bassanio in The Merchant of Venice. I argued my case as from the standpoint of a language and literature teacher, and I said that one of the best lawyers, contemporary lawyers, who also is an equally is a popular best-selling fiction writer, is John Grisham, whose many books, like with surprisingly legal, not surprisingly with legal titles like The Firm and The Client, are about legal studies, are based on the legal cases that he has personally handled in the courtrooms. So, friends. Shakespeare, too, has been appropriated by many disciplines that have nothing to do with literature. This is something important I wanted to share. From, let us say, from leadership and management studies to peace studies and international relations. Uh, you Google Shakespeare in management studies and international studies, and you will meet with titles such as the branding of the bard, Shakespeare as a commodity, Shakespeare as a brand name, how Shakespeare can help you to sell and innovate, or Shakespeare and the ethics of war. I mean, what it does, therefore, is to suggest to us that Shakespeare can be approached, can still be found useful and pertinent to the field of English research studies, English studies from cross disciplinary areas. In fact, you see, what you see on the slide, Shakespeare in the time of AI, who else but Google would think about bringing Shakespeare to onto a face by naming their language generative program as Bard AI. Well, you have Shakespeare there as well, and what you see is a newspaper article that I had written in response to a research assignment that one of my MA students had written. Um my MA students, my final year students who are supposed to submit a research paper, a research assignment in the of about 2,000 words. So when I read this particular paper on Hamlet, just give me a minute. On Hamlet, what amazed me was the felicity of her language. I mean, yeah, she is one of my good students, but what struck me was the felicity in the use of language, and I found it a little suspicious. And so, one of my friends, his son is a would-be doctor. He's doing his MBBS. So I was sharing, the sharing that piece, and he said that sir, uncle, let me just put it across ChatGPT. And well, not surprisingly, the whole research assignment was the work of a language generative AI model. And so you can imagine my despair and my anguish. By the way, this piece came on Teachers' Day last year in the Times of India, the national edition of the Times of India on Teachers' Day. And well, I couldn't but resist to title it as To Bot or Not to Bot, a teacher's open letter to a student. You can Google and find the article also. It might interest you. Okay. Um, so, what makes a research literary? I said research is the art of asking not just any question, but questions that are right, questions that are relevant, questions that are field opening, questions that will lead to uh, some meaningful contribution to the area of literary studies. But then the next question really is what makes research literary? Now, what I have on what I put on the slide is again what used to be what we called traditional scholarship. Traditional scholarship, right from the road to Xanadu, uh, which of course is a look at Coleridge's work. It's an extremely well written research, a landmark in the study in the field of uh, Coleridgean studies. Then, of course, who can forget those of you who did your MA maybe 20 years back, and those of you who have also given the NetSet exam or the PET exam. So you would know the name of Tilliard, E.M.W. Tilliard. At one point in time, historical research in the first half of the 20th century was all the rage. And Tilliard was, he wrote this extremely scholarly work called The Elizabethan World Picture. And then Stephen Greenblatt, more contemporarily, Stephen Greenblatt, on Shakespeare and Coleridge, and sorry, on Shakespeare, Marlowe, in the age and in the context, locating them in the age of the Elizabethan age, and calling it the Renaissance self-fashioning, which is we know Stephen Greenblatt is a new historicist, and therefore his materials, using a new literary theory, a new critical lens, he was able to give us some very surprising and interesting aspects of Shakespeare and his writings and his times. So anyway. What makes research literary? Well, in the new humanities, uh, you see, even in the 1990s, when I did my MA, as a researcher, if you wanted to do research on somebody like the popular fiction of P.G. Wodehouse, uh, I remember somebody wanted to do uh, a PhD on P.G. Wodehouse, but then the university and the examiner did not, they refused. Why? Because it was felt that P.G. Wodehouse was not literary enough. Well, now I think if today a young researcher wanted to do research on, let's say, Susan Collins' best-selling novel The Hunger Games, which also has been adapted into a movie, I mean, their research will still be counted as literary, even by the most hardcore, die-hard research referee or a hardcore examiner, because there has been a significant turn in the trajectory of English studies from what I would call the traditional and pure literary studies to not only interdisciplinary, but to the realm of culture studies. See, the literariness of what makes literary research, friends, is becoming more and more expansive and contradisciplinary. So today, when we say literary studies, it includes the study of films, it includes the study of theater, it includes the study of comics, tweets, memes, political discourses, historical narratives, even the publication of books. So it includes the word literary, therefore, in research, in English studies, it includes anything involved in the production, consumption, and reception of meanings. Anything that is a text, therefore, the word text itself has undergone quite a bit of reconfiguration with the start of literary theory. Anything that produces meaning is called a text. I'll pause for a minute and ask you to go through these. Are these topics? Would you be bold and rule breaking to consider any or such similar topics as your research topics? Take, for example, literary festivals and a history of books and reading in India. I was doing a similar kind of exercise, conducting a research workshop for the IITians, of course, in the humanities department. So we were talking about, you know, prospective or new areas having some interesting potentiality. So one of the topics that I suggested was this: literary festivals. Today, I mean, for the last 10, 20 years, literary festivals have become almost pandemic, isn't it? Like the pandemic. They are all over. Every big and small town, small city is holding a literary festival. And so it's interesting, therefore, to look at it from the cultural, to analyze it as a cultural phenomena and its ramifications, its impact upon what it tells us about the history of reading and the history of books itself, or the currency of books, if I may put it. Or take the other one, new cultures of remembering, oral histories, testimonial narratives, and Indian memory projects on the partition. Ganesh Devi, a very senior and much acclaimed scholar in the field of linguistics and literary studies, has something called the People's Survey of India, the People's Linguistic Survey of India. And he's done some phenomenal work, phenomenal research and scholarship in the last 15 years or so on what in the purpose of that group, the project which he calls the People's Linguistic Survey of India, is to try and save, preserve many languages, especially languages of tribes, languages of marginalized communities that are disappearing. So you could think of archival research in present times. You can and digital archiving, or you could think of new areas of looking at any kind of literature where you want to place it in the context of history, from oral histories to testimonial narratives. So this is just to give you a glimpse of the wide variety, the expansiveness of what we call literary studies, and in a sense gives hope and optimism to the question that I started with: is literary studies dying? Well, here is here are the many ways in which you can move literary studies forward and ensure not just the survival of literary studies, but also for the relevance of your research and for the relevance of you in the academia. So, from Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale on OTT platforms to the reading of comic books as a freedom narrative, to the use of analysis on ads and memes, everything is researchable. So where shall I begin, as Prufrock said? And this is probably an eternal question with every young researcher. Where shall I begin? As Prufrock says. Yes, the dilemma of a researcher, I feel, is no less than the existential crisis of Mr. Prufrock. You see, being a young researcher in English studies is like being trapped in a maze. You as a young researcher, you probably need to navigate through a labyrinth of information and materials. Um, Umberto Eco, the very famous fabulist and postmodern writer, uh, in one of his books, calls has an apt word. He has an apt word to describe the condition of a researcher. He calls it thesis neurosis. Thesis neurosis, the feeling of being overwhelmed by the task of writing a thesis. It's like what we call teaching becoming occupational psychosis. Uh, so, so as a young researcher, your journey actually begins by asking, "Where shall I begin?" Um, of course, you would if you have chosen the field of literature, then probably you can't help yourself, but you have to wrestle or do dangle with a lot of brain-busting concepts of literary theory. When I was into research, doing my research, I had to my own entry was to look at literary theory, which to me at that point in time was nothing more than a bundle of unpronounceable nouns. Names like Foucault, Derrida, Barthes, Irigaray, Sisu. I mean, I didn't even know how to pronounce those words. Forget about reading them and understanding them. So, doing research, friends, how do you begin? Is to constantly you you will be facing this kind of a dilemma. Should you? I mean, it starts with a basic question: What is a topic that I should take? Should I delve into the semiotics of Shakespearean insults? By the way, that's another. One of my research scholars is doing something on uh, the use of scatological language, meaning that the language of abuse in Shakespearean insults, or rather insults, the use of abuse and insults in Shakespearean plays, and what it does to the play itself. Should you, as a researcher, should you probe into the role of memes in playing out a new counterculture? Should you be combining Marx with eco-criticism to give a new reading to Amitav Ghosh's fiction, maybe? Or if you're good with digital humanities, if you're good with computers, or rather the science of computers, then maybe should you do research in by combining language analytics with computer data to evolve a new language model, a new language learning model? I mean, well, the random examples that I've given you seem to suggest that the possibilities of doing research and what we understand literariness of research are endless. But so is your indecisiveness. So, as a researcher, I say, how do you begin? Where shall I begin? Well, you begin by focusing, by trying to answer these 4 or 5 questions. And I think that will set you on the path. But equally important, equally important is to know what is, not research. Can you see my slide? What is not research?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Very well.
Yes, sir.
All right. There is so much of talk about theory, and in my own experience, an MA student just after finishing a master's, comes to me bursting with excitement and says, excitement over what? Excitement over some theory that she fancies, and she says, you know any one of these, sir. I really like feminism or post-colonialism. So which author or which writing should I take? Or I saw Amitav Ghosh on YouTube speak on climate change. So, which theory shall I apply? What you see at the
Yes, sir.
bottom of the slide, what you see at the bottom of the slide, the image is what we call, these are cutters. We call it cookie cutters, no? So we make biscuits on, I mean, you go on Insta and look at the many food reels, you'll find that these are the cutters. They help you to shape your cookies. You can bake your cookies and give them those shapes. So, I call I call any one of these, entry points into research as a cookie cutter approach. Uh, res- Researchers who are super excited about a particular theory and then want to apply it mechanically to whichever text they come across. Friends, doing research is not riding your theory as a hobby horse. It's very common, I am in the editorial board of several journals. It's very common for me to come across a paper where the researcher starts the paper by describing a theorist and maybe three key terms or his theoretical approach, and then goes on for the rest of the paper, goes on to do nothing except what we call a close reading of the text. And then at the end of the paper more or less say that, what, uh, this idea from the big theorist that I just told you in the beginning of the paper, well, it applies here, and then finishes. That's it. Friends, reading such a paper or doing research in this way is certainly not my idea of having a good time. When you're using theory, you must use it as a genuine interlocutor, not as a voiceover. What do I mean by that? That when you're using a theory, a new trending theory, then what you must do is to make it your primary rather than your secondary lens, so that you are dealing not just with the text and its interpretation, not just with an author and his context, but you are also equally dealing, you are engaging with the theory itself. You are modifying, you are contesting, you are amplifying the theory in ways that at the end of your research exercise, you have not only come up with a new interpretation of whatever you're doing, but also you have somehow altered, in howsoever fractionally marginal way, you have altered the very domain of theory. When you do this, friends, as a researcher, you will get your aha moment. You will get your eureka moment. Well, the course of theory, friends, has really changed. If you're reading something like A Short Introduction to Literary Theory by Jonathan Culler, you still are reading something that has become very, very old, not redundant or irrelevant, but very old. You need to read something on the right side, the image on the right side of the slide, Literature and the Internet, or Literary Theory for Robots. I mean, look. I want to put across a simple point. That look at the profile of our students in the class. We call them the millennials. We call them digital natives. And there is no way that the only way in which we can update ourselves, also both in our teaching, in our pedagogy, in our pedagogical tools, and also in our research areas, is to understand the importance of technology in doing research, whether it is quantitative research or qualitative research, whether it is applied research or action research, or a mixed method research. There is no way in which you cannot do without the digital tools that make the very process of doing research so convenient. So it's important, therefore, that you read, you update your the way in which technology, digital technology, and robots are changing the landscape, and also to realize that there are so many intersections between literature, language, and technology. You need to be aware of it. Digital humanities is a thing that has become quite current and trending in many good universities. So you also need to know, at least have an understanding, an insight into what digital humanities is all about. So what I mean is that in your habits of reading on theory, on literary criticism, well, the new humanities does demand that your reading of literary books, your reading of research methodologies also are up to date. All right. At the beginning of my talk, I said I believe in contradisciplinarity. I believe that research and doing research in English departments and making the new humanities relevant is by looking at the many interventions and intersections between literature and non-literary disciplines. So when you're, as a young researcher, or somebody wanting to do PhD, when you are thinking about what could be a good research problem, I would encourage you to look at, well, this is just a selection. I would encourage you to look at the new interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, or contradisciplinary areas, especially in the field of, what the slide shows: energy humanities, hydro humanities, that is water humanities, or ocean humanities, medical humanities. So many of my scholars are doing, and by the way, I mean, what kind of research? Well, one of my research scholars is doing something on uh, curriculum designing for medical universities in India. So it's applied research, where the researcher brings in his understanding or a selection of texts which deal with illness narratives, and make them a part, and also do some frame the curriculum. It's a 2 credit paper, which is like an add-on course that one is wanting to introduce in medical universities in India. So here is the relevance or the practicality, if you want to say, the practicality of something which belongs to the core area of literature, and yet is a combination of both quantitative and qualitative. So it involves survey, it involves putting forth a questionnaire, it involves collecting data on what? Data, for example, on the lack, or if there is the paucity of, or the need for, it's a need based research for medical students, especially post pandemic, to be introduced to illness narratives. For what? For the simple thing that even if it is a 2 credit course and an add-on course, it is to bring to the medicos something that only literature can bring: compassion, understanding, and sympathy. Kindness, compassion, sympathy, and understanding, to rediscover. And this is where new humanities would bring in the humanness in medical humanities. So, topicality, novelty, relevance, significance, practicality, all of it, in a sense, I can argue for each one of these interdisciplinary or contradisciplinary and many other such emerging fields, whether it is food studies, whether it is animal studies, etc., etc. Okay, I think I'm going to actually skip this part for want of time. Yeah, I also want to break the rule, or rather this myth, that research writing is critical writing, and critical writing therefore is divorced from, cannot be the same as creative writing. You see, traditionally, once again, traditionally one looks at critical thinking and creative writing as as at odds with each other, isn't it? um, I mean, the basis for this kind of thinking, commonplace thinking, is our belief that creativity is an act of the unconscious or the subconscious, whereas critical thinking is supposed to be an exercise of rationality, of reasoning, which is a conscious faculty. My argument really is, my suggestion to you is to bust this myth in your own, discipline, or in your own area, field of work. You see, yes, while a doctoral thesis, or a research paper, which incidentally should run not into 2000 words, not the kind of essays and articles that are being passed off as research papers in many predatory journals, the pay and publish kind of journals. But we expect that, when you're doing research, it has to be a work of rigorous scholarship. I said this before, and I'm repeating it, because what it does is, it requires from the researcher domain knowledge, it requires from the researcher higher order thinking, it does require bibliographical expertise, digital literacy also. But at the same time, I would also say that it requires creative writing. Writing is thinking, and thinking is writing, friends. And an example of research, of recent scholarship in the field of literature and language, is this one, the one that you see on your slide. It's called The Argonauts, published in 2015 um, by a English professor called Maggie Nelson. It's called The Argonauts. Of course, the references to the to the mythology of the Argonauts, Jason's Argonauts. So, what is interesting for me when I read this book is the manner in which, it opened my eyes to, because what it does is it kind of interweaves personal narrative that is almost like autobiography with critical analysis, with philosophical inquiry, all of it together from an overarching feminist point of view. Take for instance the line that I have that you see a short passage just to give you a glimpse. I mean, this is not enough, of course, but just a sample. Where she says, "This is, by the way, this is, this book." Just hang on a minute. Yeah. Are my slides moving?
Yes, sir, moving.
Acha, okay. What do you see on right now? What is on your screen?
Research in English.
Oh,
There
okay.
is a cover page of a book.
Acha, just a minute. No, let me go back. Yeah. So if you look at this, can you now see this slide? Can research writing be creative writing?
Sure. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. This is an example of what is called auto theory. Auto theory. Literary criticism, one of the new interesting directions in which literary criticism and literary theory has moved is what is called auto theory. As the name suggests, auto theory is a mix of autobiography, things that are personal, intimate, and autobiographical, with an admixture combined with literary criticism, philosophical investigations, semantics, even discourse analysis. And uh, Maggie Nelson's The Argonauts is a book where she not only talks about books and texts and historical cultural movements, but she also talks about how she went through her pregnancy to kind of interweave, to combine and blend all these things together in a rigorous exploration of sexuality, gender, and family. And what is also interesting is when you read what is there on the slide is the manner is just a sample which suggests how she can combine the clarity and precision of scientific writing with the beauty and lyricism of creative writing. And therefore, I, I say that the best of research writing that I read, that I have come across, are also examples of creative writing. And no wonder Maggie Nelson, she won, her book, this book, Argonauts, it won the National Book Critics Circle Award in Criticism the same year as it was published. So you think about any books, any recent non-fiction book by Amit Chaudhary, or for that matter, Amitav Ghosh, his Smoke and Ashes, for instance, or The Great Derangement, or a book by Amit Chaudhary. You look at the way in which they bring in also, in the case of Amit Chaudhary, he brings in Indian aesthetics and Western theories in the reading of right from from Tukaram to to Tagore, to name it, and personalizing it in a manner which which makes the writing of such books free from jargon, or free from falling into the trap of jargon. Too much jargon. There is, I mean, you might, when you read a Spivak or a Derrida, you might have felt a bit overwhelmed by a very, very specialized vocabulary that they write in. But reading somebody like Amit Chaudhary, or reading somebody like Amitav Ghosh, writing in their non-fiction fictional works, clearly shows that the path of research also, I mean, their works are fully researched. They are examples of exemplary research, and how the path of research can be a combination of the best of critical analysis with creative writing, with imaginative writing. That is what is called auto theory. All right. I kind of leave you with a book. Many of my observations that are placed before you today are, and much more, are there in a book. Well, this is a book that was published by Macmillan in last year, and those of you who are into research, you might find the book useful. So, thank you so much, and I, I just hope that we have a good interaction, and there are some the right questions to be asked at the end of a workshop on research.
Is there any question, query? No, sir. All are satisfied with your lecture. Thank you so much. And I would like to announce that the feedback link will be sent on the registered email of every delegates. Don't worry about feedback link and certificate. Thank you very much. Please, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I request my colleague, uh, Dr. Vishwambar Chavan, to propose vote of thanks.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Sri Muk MSP Mandal Sri Muktanand College Gangapur, District Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar. Department of English Sri Muktanand College Gangapur is organizing one-day national level workshop on today's topic research methodology. First, I would like to thank management and CDG member Sri Muktanand College Gangapur. Then I big thank you to our college principal and chief organizer, respected Professor Dr. C.S. Patil Madam, for giving valuable time to this program. I would like to thank respected Dr. Mustajib Khan sir, Professor and Head Department of English, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar. Then also I would like to thank respected Dr. Prantik Banerjee, Professor and Head, Department of English, Hislop College, Nagpur, for your valuable guidance on research and research methodology. Thank you to our college Vice Principal, respected Dr. B.T. Pawar sir, and respected Dr. Bagul Madam. Also, thank you our college IQSC coordinator, Dr. V.F. Jadhav sir. A lot of thanks, respected Dr. V.S. Bandal sir, organizing secretary and head Department of English, who arranged such a wonderful program. I also thank you for respected Dr. D.S. Salunke sir and respected Dr. Ajay Deshmukh sir, our colleague, Department of English. Then also a heartfelt thank you to all the participant colleagues, friends and students. Thank you to all of.
I see
Thank you very much.
I see a few participants who have raised their hands.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I haven't registered, sir. I haven't registered. So kindly send me the certificate, sir.
Okay, these are technical issues, sir.
Okay.
We'll do the right thing for it. Don't worry.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Right.